On October 13, 2014, author, professor, and scholar Reza Aslan was interviewed by Cenk Uygur on the Young Turks. The conversation that they had was predicated on the subject of religion, and it was during this conversation that Aslan made the following argument.
Your language is just symbols for ideas and expressions. The words coming out of my mouth are absolutely neutral. They have no meaning whatsoever unless you agree on the meaning of these words. You agree with them because you understand them.
Yeah.
I could just make up my own language right now. I could just start speaking in some made-up language and you would not understand me.
Right. So
that's what religion is. It's a language. That's all it is.
Religion is a language, which is to say, each individual religion is its own individual language. And what other way could this reasonably be interpreted other than metaphorically? Indeed, metaphorically speaking, there isn't anything unreasonable about comparing religion to language, in that it's an exclusive means of communication. However, it's what Aslan says immediately after this thesis that renders it much less reasonable.
It's a language. That's all it is.
And as it happens, Aslan made this very argument on the Young Turks the year before.
If you believe that there is something beyond the material world, that there is something that is truly transcendent, then you need some kind of language to talk about it, to make sense of it. That's all that religion is.
Now, again, there isn't anything unreasonable about the notion itself, but apart from communicating with other believers, there are other ways in which religion can be utilized. Metaphorically speaking, religion can be many things. Religion is a university, in that educators can cite it when teaching philosophy as well as supposed history and science. Religion is a government, in that it legislates what you can do, what you must do, and what you should not do. Religion is a weapon, if/when it is employed to justify acts of violence. You see, that's what seems to be missing in Aslan's analysis: actions. His argument is that religion is a means to express oneself and one's faith, but due to the stress on that's all it is, there doesn't seem to be any latitude to entertain the notion that religion is also a means to act upon one's faith, for the betterment or the detriment of mankind, not just to express that faith. And if, for the sake of argument, Aslan would be willing to categorize such actions under expressing one's faith, well, then language is not really an appropriate metaphor, is it? But it isn't likely that Aslan would. Not only does he never venture from the theme of communication, he posits that the only thing there is to communicate is a set of symbols and metaphors.
It's a set of symbols and metaphors. It's symbols and metaphors, symbols and metaphors. When I choose to express my faith in a language of symbols and metaphors, and simply expressing that faith through a set of symbols and metaphors, there are dozens and dozens of ready-made symbols and metaphors that provide that kind of language for communication.
So it certainly does seem, even with his vague articulation, that Aslan's argument does not extend any further than personal expression, and hence it disregards instances when religion is used for the purposes of education, legislation, violence, etc. It's a rather unsophisticated argument that blatantly sells religion short. Not to mention, the whole language metaphor seems like it's too trivial to even bring up in the first place. You could easily use such a metaphor to describe any way in which people communicate. By Aslan's metric, politics is a language, art is a language. Whatever the hell you call this could metaphorically be considered a language as well. So to say that religion is a language because members of the same religion can jolly well talk about it doesn't say anything about religion itself. It's just stating the obvious. The same can be said of his observation that words and symbols have no meaning until they are given meaning. Again, that is true, but it's an extraordinarily pedestrian point to make. Do we really need to waste our time musing over how these are just symbols unless we agree that they're letters, and that they don't spell anything unless we agree that they spell tree, and that this isn't really a tree, we just call it that? Yet again, Aslan is not saying anything about religion in particular by pointing out all of this obvious trivia. What he has said about religion is that it is nothing more than a means to express nothing more than symbols and metaphors, which in and of themselves mean nothing. The shortest and sweetest way to criticize Mr. Aslan would be to say that he had nothing to say.
I might as well be speaking Chinese.
Or to be more charitable, he was just stating the obvious. And it still took him over 5 minutes to state the obvious. Now that sounds good enough to be a Monty Python sketch.
This parrot is no more. It has ceased to be. It's expired and gone to meet its maker. This is a late parrot.
You know, if you're having a conversation about the effect that religion has on society, the reasons why people would practice a religion, or even the ways in which religious values clash with Western values, there are many places a conversation like that can go. Many places indeed. So when that conversation is had with a scholar of all people, and it doesn't seem to go anywhere, well, among other things, that is rather silly.
Quite agree. Silly, silly, silly. Right, get on with it. Get on with it!
Let's rewind back for a moment here. Why do you speak English?
It's the language of my adopted country. So
And I imagine that so that you can communicate with me because I speak English.
Yes.
You could just make up your own language if you wanted to.
Right.
Because
It's more convenient,
Your
yes.
language is just symbols for ideas and expressions. The words coming out of my mouth are absolutely neutral. They have no meaning whatsoever unless you agree on the meaning of these words. You agree with them because you understand them.
Excuse me, this is irrelevant, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's not easy to pad these out to 30 minutes.